I'm Arian Mack. I'm a professor here at the New School in the division called the New School for Social Research that was formerly called the Graduate Faculty, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight for this event, which we are doing in collaboration with Amnesty International, who is our co-organizer and probably the main organizer. We are less have been less involved in the organization than Elise Auerbach from Amnesty, who will talk at the end of this program. And I also want to recognize our two co-sponsors, the International Campaign for Human Rights in Iran and Scholars at Risk. So that is social research. Now, social research, of which I am the editor, is the journal of the New School for Social Research, which I've edited for more than I'm going to admit to, and was begun in 1934 by the University in Exile graduate faculty that became the graduate faculty of the New School for Social Research. I'll say a tiny bit about the University in Exile in a minute, but I just wanted to say something about my own personal investment in Iran. It happened, and it happened in 2000 when the Soros Foundation offered me the possibility of going to Iran. And at that point, I was trying to do several projects that in Iran, and they were in favor of my getting them done. I got one of them done, not the other. I met extraordinary people. It was a moment of a thaw. Hatami was president then. I came back. Subsequently, we did a special issue of the journal on Iran, and more importantly, I think what really got me hooked was that somebody I liked very much, who was both my colleague and friend, Kian Tajbash, who was both an Iranian and had dual citizenship, who was my colleague at the New School, went back to Iran to live and to teach. And he landed in prison, very unjustly, of course, and was imprisoned twice and was in very bad shape. And I cared a lot about Kian. I hated what was happening. I got involved in the campaign to try to help get Kian released from prison. And so those were the two personal sort of events that brought me into the world of Iran scholars at risk. And it led me to start, actually, a section of social research, which is the quarterly, which I said I edit and which is published by the New School, to start a section in every issue called Endangered Scholars Worldwide, in which we list and describe cases of scholars around the globe who are being silenced, persecuted, executed, losing their positions. And on top of that, on the 75th anniversary of the University in Exile, which was the university set up by the first president of the New School, Alvin Johnson, to rescue professors, intellectuals from the rise of Hitler. It was an extraordinary operation. He rescued about 180 people. Some subset of them became the University in Exile at the New School. So you can see that this place, which I've been fortunate to teach at and be part of, has a very long and strong tradition of being engaged with free inquiry, protecting scholarship. And it was why that plus my own connection to things Iranian was why I was so pleased when Elise Auerbach came to me and asked me if we could do this event that you're now part of tonight here, and I jumped at the chance to do it. So that's where, oh, now one more thing I do want to say. We also, on the 75th anniversary of the University in Exile, launched a University in Exile Fellowship, which brings a rescued scholar to the new school every year. We have, this is our 5th year. We do this in conjunction with Scholars Rescue Fund. And this year we have a remarkable scholar from Iran, from Syria. We have had an Iranian scholar. We've had scholars from Zimbabwe and Ethiopia. And I'm hoping that the new school can keep this program going forever. It costs money, which is the hard part. Anyway, all of these things, I just wanted you to know why this is such an important event for us to be having here at the new school. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you the person who's going to moderate the discussion tonight, Gissou Nia. And since I don't know her biography by heart, I have to read it to you. Gissou Nia is executive director of the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center, prior to which she worked on war crime trials at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Most recently, she assisted in pretrial proceedings before the International Criminal Court in respect to allegations of crimes against humanities committed during 2007 post-election violence in Kenya. In addition to her work at the International Criminal Tribunals, Ms. Nia has worked closely with different institutional actors in addressing ongoing human rights violations in the Islamic Republic of Iran. She has spoken to over 200 survivors of human rights abuses perpetrated by the Islamic Republic of Iran and has published comprehensive reports documenting these abuses. Anyway, it is a great pleasure to have her here tonight to moderate this event. And as she will tell you, we're going to start with a very brief film.
Thank you for coming. Thank you to the co-sponsors of this event, Amnesty International, the New School, the International Campaign for Human Rights in Iran, and Scholars at Risk. Before we launch into the panel and start to hear from our excellent lineup of panelists tonight, we're going to play a video about academic freedom that was prepared by the International Campaign for Human Rights in Iran. It's a short 2.5-minute clip.
تجمع اعتراضی یعنی کتک خوردن، یعنی بازداشت، یعنی مورد توهین قرار گرفتن، یعنی شکنجه برای گرفتن اعترافات غیر واقعی و دروغ، یعنی سلول انفرادی، یعنی محبوب شما از ادامه.
ما در این چند سال اخیر دیده‌ایم با همه تدابیر امنیتی رفته بر دانشگاه و فضای خفقان و سرکوب ویژه در دانشگاه امروز همچنان دانشگاه زنده است و این آخرین سنگر آزادی امروز میزبان صدای رسا و فریاد آزادی خواهی دانشجویان است.
I'd like to introduce the panelists who will be speaking here tonight, and maybe one by one they can come and join us on the stage. Mahboubeh Abbasgholizadeh is an Iranian women's rights activist within the Muslim context. She holds an MS in Communication Sciences from Alam Tabi University and a BA in Theology from Tehran University. In 2010, Abbasgholizadeh received the Johann Philipp Palm Prize for Freedom of Expression. In addition, she is an active member of the Stop Stoning Forever campaign and the Iranian Women's Charter movement. Despite being jailed several times by the Iranian government for her peaceful activism, she continues to serve as director of Zanon TV, an alternative media space online for women, and has produced several documentary films about women's rights in Iran. Abbasgholizadeh taught at the University of Connecticut last year and is a Scholar Rescue Fund Fellow and visiting scholar at Rutgers University this year. Mahboubeh, if you can come join us. Okay. Mehdi Arabshahi was born in Tehran in 1980. He started his student activism at the University of Zanjan, from which he graduated with a bachelor's in electrical engineering. While attending the University of Zanjan, Arabshahi became a member of the Central Committee of the school's Islamic Association, one of Iran's pro-democracy student organizations. He was responsible for the group's political, organizational, and secretarial units from 2001 to 2003. At the same time, he was also the association's representative at the General Council of the Daftar Tahkim Vadat, or what would translate as the Office for Strengthening Unity, for 4 years. Mehdi, if you can come join us. Hadi Ghaemi is an internationally recognized expert on Iran and human rights. In 2008, together with international human rights activists in the Netherlands, he founded the International Campaign for Human Rights in Iran, which is a co-sponsor of this event and which the video is linked with. The campaign has since become one of the leading organizations documenting human rights violations in Iran and building international coalitions to support human rights. Previously, Ghaemi worked with Human Rights Watch, joining the organization in 2004 as the Iran and United Arab Emirates researcher. His work at Human Rights Watch focused international attention on the plight of migrant workers in Dubai, as well as the repression of civil society in Iran. After the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, he was a member of the first UN-commissioned human rights fact-finding mission to Afghanistan. Between 2001 and 2004, he worked with NGOs focusing on Afghanistan and Iraq. Hadi, if you can join us on the stage, thank you. And we have another Hadi who will be joining us. Hadi Kahalzadeh is a visiting scholar at the Department of Political Science at Valdosta State University in Georgia. He taught as a lecturer at the Azad University of Iran and University of Applied Sciences and Technology from 2006 to 2009. After the presidential election in June 2009, he was expelled from teaching. He served as an economist for Iran's Social Security Organization from 2003 to 2011. He was a board member of the Iranian Alumni Organization, an advocate for student and women's rights and labor movements from 2003 to 2011. He was elected to the board of directors of Iran Party's House in 2006. When he was a student, he was an activist and member of the Iranian Students' Office for Consolidation Unity, again, the Daftar Tahkim Vadat, the only democratically elected student body in Iran from 1999 to 2003. Hadi, if you can please join us. I should say that I'm very honored to be in the company of our panelists here today who head human rights organizations that work on this issue of academic freedom and who in their own right were student activists inside the Islamic Republic of Iran or who worked as activists on other issues in Iran. Tonight, we are going to be speaking about the student activists that are currently incarcerated inside Iran today. Some of these names may be familiar to you if you follow developments on Iran human rights issues. People like Majid Tavakoli, Bahar Hedayat, Shabnam Madadzadeh, and others. Many of these individuals belong to groups like that Mehdi and Hadi belong to back in Iran and have been imprisoned solely on the basis of their peaceful activism. The students' rights movement in Iran has been very strong since the 1950s. And our panelists will probably get into more details on sort of the history and their experiences with the movement. But it's been, they've had many decades of being very active, similar to other activist movements inside Iran. There was a major crackdown on student activists in 1999. And following June 2009, many of you may remember that there was a crackdown on protesters who took to the street to challenge the disputed vote in the presidential election of June 2009. We've seen that many student activists who were involved in that movement, either in the Green Movement or just in the movement generally to push reforms forward in Iran and to challenge what happened in those months, have since been arrested, imprisoned, in some cases forced into exile within the country, and in other cases have left Iran altogether because they could no longer pursue their activism and they dealt with increasing restrictions. Many of those individuals who have come outside of Iran are people that my organization, the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center, and other human rights organizations that work on Iran have interviewed about their experiences. I should mention that although I believe tonight's focus is on student activists and those who are at risk for repression and targeting for imprisonment, the issue of academic freedom in Iran is much broader than that. It also relates to the way in which professors at universities are restricted from teaching certain subject matter in the curriculum that they create for their classes. I believe that one of our panelists will allude to that and give some background on that. It also relates to the complete denial of higher education to certain groups of individuals, like individuals that belong to religious minorities like the Baha'i faith. It also relates to those that have been denied from pursuing their higher education on account of their activism and who are called the starred students. That's something that I believe our panelists will touch on as well. So the issues of academic freedom are much broader than simply those who are targeted in the student movement, and they relate to professors, students, and others that are involved in the university system alike. So thank you very much. I want to welcome all our panelists again, and we will begin with each panelist speaking for about 7 to 10 minutes about their personal experiences and also the general issues relating to academic freedom inside Iran. And if we can, we'll start with Hadi Ghaemi, who, as I mentioned, is the director of the International Campaign for Human Rights on Iran, and I believe that he'll be providing a bit of a framework on the issue for us here tonight.
Thank you, Gissou John. And I would like to thank the organizers, especially Amnesty USA and New School that are hosting this event and worked very diligently to bring us together. I'm going to be very brief because we have a number of distinguished panelists who have first-hand experience to relate to you, and I'm just going to give you a general observation of the topic we want to address, academic repression in Iran and persecution and prosecution of not only students and professors, but generally I want to look at the question of the relationship between the state in Iran, the Islamic Republic particularly, and academia. And what has been very, very, I would say, a difficult relationship between the two institutions. But beyond that, first let's look at the position of academia in Iranian contemporary history. Indeed, Iranian universities and students have always been on the forefront of change, particularly progressive change in the country, because they have been the centers of critical thinking, places where they have looked at social, economic, and political conditions of the country and have challenged the authorities and the powers to be from the very first day when modern universities in Iran took off. And when we look at recent history, as far back as 1950s, under the previous regime, under the monarchy, the universities were always the place where the harshest repression was being applied. And indeed, Iranian history is full of days and events that originated within university campuses and became the seeds of change for future events. So during the Shah's time, before 1979, many different students became people who started organizations and political movements that many ways challenged the regime in 1979, and particularly in 1978-79 itself, during the revolution, university campuses were the driving centers of the revolution very much. And the student movement was one of the very first populations who brought the idea of popular uprising to the larger population. I have my very own personal account of first time I came across as a young boy in 1978 toward a group of people who were publicly demonstrating and challenging the authorities, and it was on a university campus. And of course, then it caught fire, brought us the revolution, and then we have the Islamic Republic as an institution emerging. In 1980, the Islamic Republic and its officials very much pointed the spear of their consolidation of power toward universities. The very first acts that happened was that a majority of university professors were purged, blacklisted, and expelled from universities. I can say that within social sciences and humanities and arts, well over 60% of professors were banned from further teaching and academic activities. And then soon after that came an era called Cultural Revolution that included complete closure of all universities. The authorities were so frightened and threatened by the energy within the universities that they decided they have to shut down the entire university system, which they did, and they implemented what was called Cultural Revolution, which is the genesis of much of what we're going to talk about tonight. Tonight you're going to hear many experiences and developments in academia over the past 8 years, particularly from 2005 to 2013. But the genesis of it was in the 1980s when admission to universities, ideological vetting of professors, and many other criteria for being part of academia was instituted and put into rules and regulations of the new state. And really what that points to me, is the fear of the powers to be of critical thinking. It has been a battle of ideas in Iran over the past 34 years, and universities have been at the center of it. this cultural revolution meant that the new government could very much exert its influence over who gets admission to universities, who gets to be a professor in the universities, and generally what is the curriculum and direction of universities. Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of Islamic Republic, very much wanted to purge academia of Western ideas and believed that Islamic teachings can influence and reshape academia. Of course, knowing modern sciences and all the different branches of academia, we know that that's a very a very simple-minded approach to the broad body of knowledge that we all have learned in colleges and universities. So throughout the 1990s, of course, there was a backlash, and there was another wave of critical thinking taking off in the universities that eventually led to the reform movement and election of a reformist president in 1997. That gave a resurgence of student movement and activities on university campuses, although even back then in 1999 especially, we already had very harsh repression and violence breaking out. But the point I'm making is that throughout the 1990s and up to 2005, when Khatami wrapped up his administration, there was a resurgence of student organizations. You have heard the name of one student union, Daftar Tahkim Wahdat, the Office to Consolidate Unity. Ironically enough, this was the organization that came out of the Cultural Revolution in 1980 to institute the Islamization of universities. And yet, 15 years later, it was on the cutting edge of challenging the Islamic Republic. And the children of that organization, that some of them are sitting with me here, became the new critics and dissidents of the Islamic Republic. But yet, between 1997 and 2005, I would say they had kind of a spring, a resurgence, a reinvigoration of their influence on the society. And unfortunately, starting 2005, when Ahmadinejad became president, there was a complete rollback, a policy of targeting universities in all its totality. And that's what you're going to hear in the other speeches, how professors have been purged again, how student organizations have been shut down, students have been imprisoned, and one of the most horrifying developments of those 8 years was a new widespread trend of purging student activists from academia altogether through a formalization of banning them from education for life, something that really you cannot find in many other countries, where a young person, as an undergraduate, just because of writing in a student newspaper or giving a speech on a university campus, is banned from life for pursuing higher education in all its forms within that country. And I've brought with me a report that back in 2010 our organization put out and goes to details of it. There are copies of the full report and summary of it in the back. But what that resulted in is basically thousands of students losing their ability to become, to be able to pursue higher education. And those are the policies that will be discussed tonight. I also want to mention very briefly that now we're under a new administration. There is supposedly a different approach. But let me just say what has been promised, what has remained only rhetoric, and what has been put in action. So with regard to reinstatement of students barred from education and professors expelled, the new Minister of Higher Education has promised and has said they can return. But we have seen very few instances of that to happen. With regard to student activists bringing back their organizations and exercising their freedom of association, we have seen no developments on that front. The security intelligence agencies are still very much exerting a lot of pressure on them to disband them and not let them come together. And generally, with regard to freedom of association and expression on campuses, there's a tiny spark of hope, but we have a long way to go. And I'll just give you one example. About 2 weeks ago, Rouhani went to Tehran University. And of course, you can imagine that it generated a lot of excitement of a lot of students who wanted to come. These were people who really campaigned for him to to come to power, and they wanted to participate in hearing what he had to say and participate in Q&A with him, but security forces completely banned the majority of the student population to enter the hall. They beat them, they dispersed them, and only allowed students affiliated with Basij or the state organization loyal to the state to be in the room. And that was a very, very troubling development for me, that here's this new president with all his promises. He goes to a university and he can't even get a general population to be in the room. So I'm going to stop here, and my distinguished panelists will delve into details and their own personal experiences.
Thank you, Hadi, for that framework for the audience. Now we'll move on to Mehdi, who can speak a bit about his own experiences dealing with some of what Hadi raised in his comments to open.
I would like to thank the organizers of tonight's event for having me. I think this is a great opportunity for me to tell a story of my friends who were arrested, tortured, and banned from education in Iran just because of their political activities or their religious beliefs. I think this is a sad story of Iran, but I hope at the end of discussion we can enlighten a new path to support victims of widespread human rights violation in Iran. First, I'm going to introduce Miss Bahar Hedayat. She's a spokesperson for Daftar Tahkim Wahdat. Daftar Tahkim Wahdat is the largest pro-democracy and human rights student union in Iran, and I'm honored that I was a member of Central Council of Daftar Tahkim Wahdat at the same time with Bahar, and I saw her efforts for democracy and human rights in Iran. Believe it or not, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison just because of non-violent activities in universities and because of her efforts for democracy and human rights in Iran, and she's in prison since 2010. The second one is another friend of mine, Majid Tawakkoli. Majid is just 27 years old, but he spent more than 5 years in prison. He's not a criminal, dangerous criminal. He just organized a meeting to criticize the supreme leader of Iran. And in Iran, criticizing the supreme leader is illegal. And also, if you criticize Ayatollah Khamenei, they will send you to prison. And Majid crossed the red line, and they sentenced. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Another famous imprisoned student is Zia Nabavi. If I want to describe the admission process in Iran, all the universities are under control of the government and the Ministry of Higher Education, and we have a central entrance exam for universities and a central admission bureau. Zia Nabavi, during the undergrad, was a student activist, but then when he applied for master, he had admission from a very good university in Iran, but when he went to start the master, they told him that you are banned from education, and this is a direct order from the Ministry of Intelligence. Zia and some other students like him try to organize an advocacy group to defend their right to education, and Zia became the spokesperson of the Right to Education Council. You can guess what was the response of the regime to this council. They just arrested Zia and other friends and they sent him to prison, and they sentenced him to 10 years in prison. Violation of academic freedom and academic rights in Iran have various types. For example, for right to education, we can see that some students are deprived of education because of their political activities against the dominant ideology in Iran, and some others because of their religious beliefs, like Baha'is, who they are not allowed to study in any universities of Iran. We have two types of deprivation in Iran. Some of them are star students, who they were students at the undergrad, but because of their activities, they could not be admitted in any universities for master or PhD. And also we have a disciplinary committee in Iran, in any universities of Iran, and disciplinary committee can expel you from university when you are a student because of your activities at the university. They can expel you from university for life or maybe for 1 or 2 semesters. We can see also we have many arrests and detention in Iran. Many students were arrested and detained because of their activities, and also sometimes they said, okay, your activities is acting against national security or is propaganda against the regime. And also we have many limitations of student organizations and publications. For example, in Iran, if you want to establish a new student association, they didn't let you. Just they let to students who are pro-regime. And if you want to criticize the policies or regulations, they won't let you. And we can see also some of the professors are banned from teaching at universities. In Iran, we have a kind of ideological vetting for professors. If they want to, if you want to be a professor, academic competency is not enough, and you need. They check your background to be sure about your ideological loyalty. OCU is abbreviation of Office of Consolidating Unity, the translation of Daftar Tahkim Wahdat. The Human Rights Commission of OCU wrote a report about the number of detention and, for example, the students who were deprived of education in Iran. And you can see a list of them. For example, the numbers are the number of detained or convictions in court or imprisoned students and others. They sent this report to Mr. Ahmad Shahid. Ahmad Shahid is the special rapporteur for United Nations in the human rights issue of Iran. I put the picture of Mr. Shahid here to remember his important role and appreciate his efforts. I believe appointing a special rapporteur for human rights was one of the best things that international community did to improve human rights condition in Iran. And now I'm gonna briefly explain my own experience. After getting admission for master, when I went to university for enrollment, I saw 2 stars next to my name. And the dean of the college told me that you have to go to intelligence bureau. And also I went to intelligence office. In intelligence office, they told me you have 2 stars. Some students have 1 star or 2 stars, and some of them had 3 stars next to their name. You have 2 stars and 1 star, and 2 stars a student can be a student, but they will expelled from university due to any political activities. And 3 stars a student couldn't even start their education at higher level. Okay, I started my education, but it was not easy for me to forget the democracy and human rights. I was elected as a member of Central Council of Daftar Tahkim Wahdat, and then I was arrested 4 times because of my activities in Iran, and I spent near 100 days in solitary confinement. And also when I was ready to present my dissertation, they expelled me from university. You know, we had a presidential election in Iran this year, and Mr. Rouhani is new president. President Rouhani and his administration are better than Mr. Ahmadinejad, but the fact is that in Iran, the supreme leader is still the main power, and we have many problems to solve human rights issues. I think sometimes the complexity of politics in Iran is misleading for foreign observers because they think, okay, a new president will solve the problem and don't worry about human rights issue in Iran. But I think today, I want to say that today we need international support more than past because we can see some signs of reform, but we have many students in prison, like Bahare, Majid, and Ziad that I said, and also Ministry of Education begin the hopeful trend to let the STARS student go back to university, but it is a slow and reversible trend. And I think President Rouhani and his administration have their own priorities. Maybe the human rights issue are at the bottom of the list, and we can ask them and we can demand them to push the human rights issue in one of the first priorities. And I think we can do it. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity, and I welcome questions after the discussion.
Mehdi, thank you very much for your comments, and I'm sure we all hope that your friends are released from jail soon. Hadi, the second Hadi, if I can move on to you. I believe that you're going to touch a bit upon the restrictions that professors in Iran face, and also talk to us about your involvement in the student movement.
Thank you. Thank you, Gissou. I would like to thank the organizer for providing this opportunity. And actually, I am delighted to be here to talk about Iran's academic repression. As a second Hadi, as another Hadi, let me continue the argue that Mr. Ghaemi talked about. Actually, a few years ago, one agent from one investigator from committee in charge of selection of professor university faculty members referred to me to inquire about qualification of one of my friends who had applied to a position for teaching position in university, and the agent asked about my friend's background and wanted to know whether he was qualified for this position or not. And so I explained that yes, I know him, and my friend has a very great background, academic background, have a great knowledge in economic knowledge, and he has a diligent character. The agent interrupted me and said, sorry, frankly, we don't want to evaluate his academic and professional work. We want to evaluate his loyalty and allegiance to the government. And then he explained that how actually selection committees have been centralized in one committee in science ministry, and how the academic, actually the selection committee changed their policy, and the selection criteria have changed to the extent that in the Ministry of Science, a potential professor is evaluated as the same as the way ambassador candidate is evaluated. And I shocked it when he said that after 2008, 2007, we changed our policy, and for increases our accuracy, actually, we evaluated the one professor exactly same as the the ambassador candidate. And why is there such a strict policy actually to select a faculty member, and why is there such a strict policy to select the faculty members, and why is the government so concerned with the universities? I think in order to understand the academic repression in Iran, we need to understand the, as Dr. Ghaemi said, relationship between two institutions. And also we have to understand the characteristic of both the government and the university institutions in Iran. We know Iran has one authoritarian and ideologic regime. And of course, nothing is more threatening than the crisis of authority and ideology. And university institution has always posed a direct or indirect challenge to the dominant ideology and authority in the regime because of its features, actually, because of its characters. In the eyes of in the regime eyes, any nationwide and credible institution with a high mobilization ability is a potential threat that should be controlled. The university institution is a nationwide network which has actually spread across 70% of Iran's cities with the high national and political prestige and social credit, and has a strong capacity to mobilize the students. Secondly, the university institution is a bridge that connects the social movements and the students to women, laborers movements, as well as political and human rights activities. Furthermore, we know that university institution provides a tribune for a different social movement and a group for all our country to express their voice through this network. Most of political and social activists come from the university institution, and all of political party recruit their members from the university. These features have made the universities the main engine of social and political movement, and the starting point of political development and evolution in Iran, as again Dr. Ghaemi mentioned before. And indeed, historically speaking, the university has been the most resilient institution against repression and has been able to recover from suppression sooner than the other social institutions. The following freshman student every year as a fresh blood have always dwelled the efficiency of the repression machine. And that is why the regime has been concerned about the rule and influence of the university. The regime experimentally has learned that the best starting point of repression is university. In 1980, the experience of cultural revolution to consolidate the new regime and to eliminate its opposition groups taught them to how extent the starting point is important. Indeed, the experience of 1998 university dormitory riots in Tehran as a first planned attack to the reformists. The next experience in the 2009, exactly after Green Movement, the first planned attack is targeted the university and the dorm of a student. And this background, historical background, clearly shows that the suppression, the university students, is the first step that regime usually take toward the general political suppression. And the academic suppression and its intensification always send a message to the civil society and other social and political movement that a new period of political repression has begun. During the past few months, as you maybe know, the conservatives have shown a great concern with choosing a new Minister of Science. The recent planning, propaganda and sharp criticism against the new science minister clearly explain why they won't allow the university atmosphere to recover from suppression that it has been experiencing since presidential election in 2009. But in terms of ideological challenge, the university institution is an ideological driver for the Islamic Republic, teaching modern humanities and social sciences, which are promoting liberal and secular beliefs, is challenging the formal ideology. For example, 3 years ago, one of famous conservative conducted one research about the impact of social science and the belief of conservative commanders and military commanders and the former official. After they pointed out that after graduated from social sciences, 80% of former official and commander military changed their belief and become moderate or become reformist. And just only 50% of the survey participated said that we didn't get any influence from the social sciences. And 5% changed it. Maybe they were left Islamic member were of Islamic left group and become new conservative. Anyway, but their panel. Sure. They actually, in 2008, IRGSC, Center for Strategy, had compiled an ambitious plan for the fourth decade of revolution. The author of the plan, as a security concern, claimed that the social sciences are West-toxicated and an instrument for actually Western domination. In the pathology of palin, development concept had been defined as a method of new colonialism and has suggested that West-toxicated sciences suggested that West-toxicated sciences should be replaced by Islamic and indigenous approach. Subsequent of this, the new planet pressure and limitation had particularly targeted the human sciences who work and also the people who work in this area. The government announced its intention to change the textbook and academic context of certain fields such as economic and political science, as well philosophy and sociology. For instance, in my Allame Tabatabai University, certain field of study such as economics development was removed from the university curriculum. In addition, Iran's Supreme Leader Office was holding 3 annual conference in order to design a new comprehensive plan for the fourth decade of revolution. That plan is called the model for an Islamic Iranian progress. The Supreme Leader has frequently emphasized that the West-toxicated social sciences issue should be resolved, and the term progressive should be used in the place of the Western notion of development. All in all, the university institution in Iran intensifies 2 major crises to Islamic Republic. The university institution plays a significant role in challenging the dominant ideology and in authority erosion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hadi. I know you have a lot more to say, and we're going to get to that, I'm sure, when we get questions from the audience and when we speak among the panel. Our next panelist is Mahboubeh Abbasgholizadeh. She's a long-standing women's rights activist. And I should mention that last year, women were barred from 77 fields of higher education, of study in higher education. So I think it's really important for us to hear from Mahboubeh today about the state of the women's rights movement and activism in Iran in general.
Thank you for nice introduction, and thank you for all organizers, especially New School University, and my friends here and all of you. And I want to just talk about a little bit different because I mentioned myself women's activist. I'm not very comfortable with right or concept of human rights or concept of these different things because it's this very, very complicated concept, all of these things. So I just simply want to say that I'm activist, and I don't like to feel that I am victim or I'm survivor also. I just want to say that I'm activist everywhere. We are activists in Iran, in prison, in USA, and don't think that in here activism is easier than Iran for us. But the experience is just different. Just tonight, I want to talk about my friends who are students, and I think before or after Green Movement is democracy movement, we had huge solidarity with the student movement throughout the women's activists that they were part of the student movement also. And so it's kind of intersectional activism between people like Bahare or Shabnam Madadi. They identified themselves as a feminist and as a student. So part of them were from or are from student movement and part of them from feminist movement. And they had very important role for connection between women's demands and student demands. And this connection maybe is not just about the organizing or about the protests or about the activities. It's also about the changing of the discourse and dialogue of women's movement, feminist movement, and also student movement. I don't think always right now, if I go sometime to Washington, D.C., there were very many friends from student movement. And when we go get together for dinner, they always talk in masculine way. And they are not enough, they don't know about our sensitivity, how they deal with feminist group, like that, these things. And always our student, young, feminist women, always they are between of us, okay? They wanna just translate about the language of the student and about the language of feminists. So this is very important that when we are talking about Bahar Hidayat or other women's students in prison, we mention that they are not just a student for us, they are feminists, they are part of women's movement. But why we have women's student activists? Why? I think it's because, as you mentioned, it's about the huge number of the women or girls students that they have opportunity to go to university. Why they want to go to university? One, education in Iran is not like expensive like here, and somehow it's a little. I can say that it's kind of free, but not totally free. But it's not expensive like here. Just maybe every year $2,000, $3,000 in private school, for public school is lower than that. And the other things is, here, youth, if they don't want to go to university, they have many opportunity to work in market, and there is many course for them. Then maybe it's by choice, you can say when you graduate from school that I want to go to university, or just no, I want to go to other professional thing and start my professional activities. So, but in Iran, when you are girl, when you're born girl, you don't have public space for socializing until graduation from school, from high school. And primary school, high school is just what is تکجنسیت is just woman or girl school. And so we don't have mixed school in Iran. And gender segregation is very strong in Iran, even in universities. So this is huge opportunity for teenage that, when I graduate from school, I can go to university and I have my own car, I have my own room, and I have time for socializing with guys and understand what's going on in society. So university, the concept of university for teenage girls in Iran is concept of socializing, freedom of them, expressing of their femininity. And many of them, when they go to university, they have huge energy, and when they go to university, they feel free to release all of this energy. And many of them in university, they involve in activities, in social activities, in political activities. And so I think that we miss some group here. They are left student movement, and we have very strong left student movement also in university. And right now, I have a connection with many of these young students, and they are working underground, and their favorite is socialist ideologies and new kind of analysis about and postmodern analysis, and they are very progressive in theory, more than me and more than our generation. And also they have huge energy to organize themselves, to work in underground. And so I'm saying that we just see the context of university for young woman generation, that it's the space for freedom of this expression and socializing and developing ourselves intellectually and politically and all of these things. So when I remember my first meeting with Bahar Hedayat, Shabnam Madadzadeh, or Shiva Nazarahari, and many other women's student heroes that they are in jail, or they are recently they released, they have some characteristic, some special character. It's a little bit different than women's activists like me, and totally maybe different than men students. And it's about the tolerant, more tolerant. They have more tolerant because they are between two huge movements. And I think the main agency for democratizing of the Iran in future also this kind of type of the teenage girls that they release themselves release their energy in universities, and I think they are main agency for democracy and change in Iran. And you can see many pictures from young women in the street during of green movement. And if you want to know who are them, most of them are students. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that insightful commentary, also from the women's perspective on this issue. We're going to have about a half hour for audience questions. We have 45 minutes till the end of our event tonight. I'm just going to kick it off with the question to the panelists, and then we'll move on to audience questions and take a few at a time. Some of you alluded to the fact that President Rouhani has been inaugurated and taken office, and that this may be an opening for some change. We've heard some rhetoric from his camp and from the Minister of Education. And I'm wondering, in your view, what needs to happen structurally, if anyone can answer that, but what needs to happen structurally for us to see changes in respect to the treatment of student activists, the treatment of university students and the restrictions on their education, and also the treatment of professors and what we said is the purge of professors in the academic curriculum. If we could just speak structurally to give the audience a sense of what it will take to see those changes.
I have this comment about that. It's about the gender segregation. The problem is I don't feel that I'm a student. That's why I think that you have priority to answer this question. Just from perspective of the women's issue, recently we have had a campaign about the against gender segregation, and also about it's not just about the space of the school. It's about the segregation of some particular major for women or for men. And it's started from mostly from 2010 or 2009, around that. And then I think the recent progress is new Ministry of Education had some promise about the just moving of some limitation about the major of the and just some limitation about the major, but it's still ongoing. It's not. But negotiation between the women's group and between some policymakers is about that they are gonna to remove this limitation, I hope.
Okay, if I want to explain the situation, I think President Rouhani and his administration want to do some reforms in Iran universities and higher education system. But I think the main power in Iran is in the hand of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And I think Ayatollah Khamenei and his fans maybe try to stop any reforms in universities in Iran. And I'm also sure that President Rouhani had other priorities, for example, for the sanctions or for the economy. And I think the best things for us, and maybe our duty, is to ask President Rouhani and his administration to pay more attention to human rights issue. They started a new trend at universities. For example, they declared that starter students can, for example, can apply again for universities. But as I know, we don't have any statistic about how many students could go back to university, but I think maybe just 20% of students could go back to university. And for example, some of them couldn't. Maybe one of them, I knew her, and she's famous in Iran, is Mehdi Arabshahi. Mehdi Arabshahi, I know, yes, I know that she applied again and she asked again to go back to university. But unfortunately, yesterday I saw in Facebook that she says they reject my request. And I think we have many problems. This is a maybe a complicated way for us, and we cannot say, okay, election, a new president ended the problems. I think we have to try more, we have to ask, we have to demand, and maybe we have to encourage the new administration to solve the problem in Iran.
Just very briefly, in my opinion, one of the most important challenges that Rouhani faces is the overwhelming presence of security and intelligence organizations in places like universities. Basically, what happened between 2005 and 2013 was that the most important actors on campuses became two particular organizations. One, the intelligence and security agencies, which are either part of the traditional intelligence ministry or the Revolutionary Guards intelligence units, and the representatives of the supreme leader. They have completely dissolved any semblance of independence within universities. And he can structurally pull back those people because they have no role, they have no place to be part of academia, and bring back more independent structure, which is truly around academic environment, which is more conventional in much of the rest of the world. Those two are the challenges he faces.
Thank you. I think by selecting or electing the Rouhani, a tiny window of hope is opened in Iran. But I think he has two priority. The first is the economic crisis, and the second is in the international relation, Iran's international relation. And I think he doesn't have any clear plan for the inside, actually about the inside of Iran, the public, political public. And he knows that he wants actually to use achievement from the international relationship and to solve the part of the economic crisis, and to use this achievement to actually to restore and normalize the political atmosphere inside of Iran. Now, I think he doesn't have any plan, as you can see in the education ministry, or, for example, in the interior ministry, and he tried to work with the other moderate or other conservative. He knows very well that if he want to become successful, he had to work with the other part of power in Iran, and he has a great experiences from the reformist period, and he tried to work with them, and just only try to work in the two international relationship and economy now, and hope that solve the interior problem in the next step.
I just wanted to say one thing about the character of Rouhani, because you mentioned that he doesn't have any plan really domestically. Right now, all his energy is into the nuclear negotiations or lifting sanctions or improving the economy. What troubles me most about him, I mean, there are a lot of positive things about him, but what troubles me most is that his entire resume of a public persona is of a deal maker, but a backroom deal maker. He's always operated behind the scenes and achieved some great results throughout his time in government and state for 34 years. But he's just not a very transparent person to, in public, be pursuing his goals, presenting his policies, defending them, or saying what his challenges are. And that bothers me, that how much he thinks he can, behind the scenes, get what he wants, and not use the capital, the social capital that millions of voters gave him during the election.
Some of what we touched on in those answers actually brings me to my next question. You'll see that in the back of the room, there's petitions and support of different student activists who are in prison right now and who are under threat. And I think a question that a lot of people have when they engage with this work, who are living outside of the country, who are living outside of Iran, wonder how the international community can help. Is there a role for the international community? And that may be a rather broad question, but it's something that I think we touched on in the answers, so I'd be curious to hear your views on whether or not the international community has a role in this, or if this is something that should be pursued domestically. And that's it. Whoever wants to start first. It's a loaded question.
You know, because when I talk very realistic, and then just the reality is, this is very general question, actually. When we say international, how international community can support human rights issue inside of Iran, or the other crisis that we have, it's important that who you are and from what perspective. Let
me bring one example. Recently in the media, in English language media, there was a lot of talk about how there was a vibrant conversation demanding that Majid Tavakoli be freed, the student activist that has been mentioned here today. And although the results of that are somewhat mixed, he was released on furlough for a brief period, and then he hasn't been released, but he was on furlough. It brings a larger question of whether that kind of international awareness, whether it's on social media, to distinguish it from what would happen maybe multilaterally at the UN. That's a separate thing. But to talk about whether or not it's useful to raise awareness about activists in jail through social media platforms, through mainstream media, and otherwise. That's one way we could limit this question.
I think that this is a clear question, because when we know about the case, then it's kind of the power, public power. When we know about what's going on in jail or about the particular case, then we make it like an umbrella power of the public opinion against of the authority. So always this useful, always the transformation of all of this knowledge, all of this documents, all of information is good. But the issue is from which perspective? Still, this is my question. Sometimes you think that, okay, that I don't know what is what is your image right now about Iran after our discussion if you don't have any background about the Iranian society. So the image is Iran is very black and white country, and there is some, but very, it's the fighting between good and bad side, or what? So, and also position of me is like a hero, and I'm just like a hero. I go and support the victim, and like this. We don't like that anymore. We don't like that you feel that in Iran we have many, many human rights victims, and we need heroes from outside to support us. We need participants. We need support. We need emotional things. We need, emotional support. We need you understand and have a sympathy with the issue that's going on in Iran. So this is it has very, very influence. If you describe all these things by art, by articles, in Facebook pages. But when I go to English Facebook page, particularly American Facebook page, their picture about for example, Arab woman in Saudi is like just poor people behind of the burqa, and they don't have any agency. And in Iran, I don't know if you think that in Iran, it's what kind of street we have, what kind of the dress code we have, So I'm saying that it's important. We suffer from cliché, from stereotype, that your media, your mainstream media are making about Middle East and about Iranian women and the situation of human rights in Iran. So we need support, but from real people and from real social networks. This is my idea, of course. Okay.
I think this is a good and difficult question, and but I'm gonna say that maybe for trying for human rights, the main role is on shoulder of the people who lives in Iran and who can feel the problems, and I think they can find the way to solve the problem. But what we can do here, I think maybe the role of us could be a role to complete their efforts. If we try to defend them, if we try to, for example, organize some campaigns to inform people and maybe politicians of the human rights issue in Iran, it could help them, but we cannot exaggerate about their role of people who are outside of the country. But some things like, for example, as I mentioned in my slides, some things like, for example, appointing a special rapporteur of human rights from the United Nations. Something like this maybe can help Iranian, because special rapporteurs and maybe international organizations can ask the authority of Iran about the human rights issue and ask them for improvement, and maybe they could draw the attention to the human rights.
Okay, very briefly, let me just say I'm not an impartial participant in this question, because I spend my life pretty much 24/7 with my staff doing exactly what you're saying, and obviously we believe it has impact. But it doesn't mean we have not asked ourselves, and many people have asked us, does it really have impact? So we have gone and looked for concrete cases, that what can we show people that beside generalities and, you know, big picture things that, of course, international public opinion, global village, Twitter, Facebook, all these things will exert pressure on the regime and will make a difference. But let me just give you very concrete things from the very first case I ever documented in 2004. That person whose judge was the infamous Mortazavi back then in Tehran, and pressured him and his colleagues a lot, a group of journalists. When he came out of prison, he said that that judge put a pile of prints from internet and newspapers, internationally mostly, on his desk and pointed out, and he said, how the heck does people get the details of your case, and why are they making such a big deal of your case? And obviously, it was a major concern for those people involved in persecution and prosecution of these individuals, that why is anyone paying attention to it? And they felt threatened by the fact that there is awareness. And ever since that, we have documented so many cases of people who either have come out of prison and have said that the news about them made a difference. I mean, it may not be that they immediately got released, but the beatings stopped, or the beatings became less violent, or they got to make a phone call home, or they got to take a hot shower. All these things are tangible for them in prison. And if they're not out, so many families have conveyed that to us, that ever since you interviewed me and I talked about the situation of my son in prison, things improved, or that he came out because they didn't want this to become a major news. So it is true, we have hundreds and hundreds of people around the clock in prison for many, many years in Iran. It doesn't mean that we have ended it by raising awareness, but every single success story to me is a positive thing, and keeping silent is not an option in contrast.